Welcome to Cannabis Health News Magazine. We're here today with Richie and Neil from Be Goods. Thank you guys for coming by the studio.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. It's really good to have people in the industry who know what is going on. So today, I want to cover a couple of things. First and foremost, before we get into who you guys are and why you're here in the first place and what you're doing in this wonderful cannabis movement, first thing I want to touch on is Stan Garnett, DA Stan Garnett of District 20 up in Boulder County, sent a letter last week to John Walsh that basically said, back off Boulder County. So he's stepping up to the plate where Attorney General Suthers should be stepping up to the plate and protecting Colorado. And I just want to get you guys' take on that situation with the feds saying that they're going to come in and try and close down shops, whether they're too close to a park or a school. But now we have a political entity in our state, Attorney General, DA, Stan Garnett, stepping up and saying, back off. What is your take on this one?
This is Neil. This is obviously something that is a states' rights issue. And I feel that the state should have the decision on this 100%. It seems to me that as far as all states, Colorado is doing, pretty much the best job in regulating it. And, I think the feds should step back and give Colorado a chance to show the government how we kind of successfully regulated medical marijuana industry and how that can work for the patients in Colorado. So I am all for, that kind of support, standing up for that kind of purpose.
Fantastic. And Richie?
Well, kudos to Stan Garnett for doing his job, and for being a decent human being. And I'm not disparaging anyone else by this, but I will say that while I am very conservative in certain ways, I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, I'm more of a fiscal conservative and a civil libertarian. But there are many areas where I agree with our state attorney general, Mr. Suthers. But in this area, I think he's being very hypocritical. And I say that because he's all over the federal government to get out of our state and let us have our state's rights, which I very strongly believe in. I think the federal government has trampled over the Constitution, and the Supreme Court has usurped powers that they were not given by the founders. So I'm very much a states' right advocate, and so is he when it comes to health care, something that he believes in. But this is something where he wants to shut the industry down, so he's backing off of his principled position, and that is hypocritical.
And his oath to the state. He has an oath to protect not only the Constitution of the United States, but the Constitution of Colorado State.
That's right. So he's being very hypocritical about this. So this is an area where I would diverge greatly from our Attorney General, whom I respect in many other areas.
That's a really nice way to put it, and I would have to agree with you. This is a very poignant states' rights issue. Yes. And Attorney General Suthers really should be stepping up just on the fact that this is an protected amendment issue, and it is his duty to protect the state's constitution, aside from his personal opinions on medical marijuana or cannabis use.
That's exactly right. And he's not letting his personal, or he contends that all of his other actions are principle-driven. And in this one, it's clear that it's personal preference-driven, not principled.
Well, he said that a couple times, I'm sure, yeah. I think there was a statement he made up in Vail just a few weeks ago along those lines, too, that this was, he hinted towards his personal feelings on this one. Mm-hmm. So coming back to the industry, we're facing a whole bunch of interesting hurdles. We've crossed a lot of the pitfalls over the last couple of years. We have regulatory system in Colorado, such as 1284, 109, 1043. And for those of you out there that aren't familiar with those numbers, don't worry about it. It's our regulatory system. You can look it up, but this is why we're here talking to you. We're going to go ahead and give you a chance to hear from the center owners' mouths as to how these regulatory systems affect us in a positive way and a negative way. So that said, let's just go back a little bit into you guys and who you are. Where have you guys come from? Are you native to Colorado? Did you come from another state? But really the big question is, why did you come into the cannabis industry from what you were doing before? What were you doing before? So Richie, let's go ahead and start with you.
Well, I've been a commercial real estate broker for about 40 years, and I was relatively successful in that arena. I've done some very, very large deals and made a lot of money and so forth. And I have quite a grasp of that industry. And I was in the middle of a project, a long-term project in that industry that had to do with helping people avoid foreclosure and making money for my investors and myself at the same time.
Oh, wow.
In the commercial real estate industry. And in some cases, we weren't able to help people avoid foreclosure. We just weren't able to. And in those cases, we ended up with actually a piece of real estate that was worth more than we paid for it. So we, contrary to most of the people in that business, we really, really made a strong effort to help the borrower. When we couldn't, we just couldn't. There's just no way sometimes. Well, what happened is the market turned about 2.5, 3 years ago to where we could stay in that industry, but there wasn't anybody we were going to be saving. We were just going to be acquiring properties and piling them up. And in addition to the fact that we wouldn't be fulfilling our real mission, which was to try and help these people, yeah, we'd be piling up a lot of property, but there's no cash flow. And my personal position was such that I had a few $100,000 come out of a deal, and I looked at that and said, gee, if I just live off of this, I don't know how long the economy is going to take to recover. I might run out of money, and I'll have tons of property and no money. That's not a good situation to be in. I need to get into a business where I can develop some cash flow. And contrary to what a lot of people in the business have done, you know, there are many, many people who open centers strictly out of a moral compunction to help patients.
Right.
I'm not going to claim that because it wouldn't be true. I didn't even open a center. I researched the industry as the best place I could put my money at that time. That was the summer of 2009. I thought it was about the only industry that I could invest that amount of money in and end up with something that would pay me a living where I didn't have to work 40 hours a week, and I could spend my time going back to my other business and trying to help some people in the foreclosure situation. So I investigated the industry at great length. And in investigating the industry, I found, in my view, the money was in growing it. Okay, all money. That was my whole goal. And the money was to be made in growing the product, not in selling it. So I scouted around. I hired lots of expertise. I paid a lot of money to experts to tell me how to grow it. I learned how to grow it. And in the interim, I found the right facility, and I got a little warehouse, and we got a grow going, and we were very successful. And within 6 months, I was making money.
And so this was again before the regulatory system was put into place.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And I was making money wholesaling the product to dispensaries. Consequently, I was going around from dispensary to dispensary, and I saw a lot of dispensaries. And then they passed a law. They put in the first law, which I had zero input into, and they passed a law that basically said you can't be a grower or you can't be a dispensary owner. You have to be both. Only dispensaries could grow, and only growers could have dispensaries.
Right.
So
this
and
is,
they put
this is also known as the 70-30 law, if you will, here.
The 70-30 rule, or law.
Or rule, excuse me.
Well, actually, I think it's the law. I think it's in the law. So it's the 70-30 law, although we call it the 70-30 rule, I think. But when that happened, a lot of people were in my situation. There were a lot of dispensary owners that didn't have grow facilities, and there were a lot of grow facility owners who didn't have dispensaries. So there were a lot of very fast marriages where dispensary owners who didn't have grows and grow owners who didn't have dispensaries joined forces.
Shotgun marriages. Right. We know what happens with a lot of those, right?
And that's right. And we had that kind of a shotgun marriage. I chose this dispensary for two reasons. The one reason was, of all the dispensaries I had ever been in my view, it was by far the nicest. It was the most beautiful. Yeah. It's designed well. It's not. It doesn't throw up a lot of barriers to the patients. It's a very easygoing place.
And for those of you out there who are curious about where B Goods is, it's at 90 Pennsylvania. Is that right?
90 South Pennsylvania.
South.
Oh, sorry.
80. That's right. 80 South
Pennsylvania. Sorry about that.
Next to Carmine's on Penn and Cafe Europa and the Spot.
And it is a very nice looking place. It fits into the community. Actually, I didn't even know it was a dispensary or a center. Excuse me. When I came by, it looked like another coffee shop to me.
Yeah, we have a very strong ethic about not putting our face out there in the community in front of the children and so forth. There are people who don't agree with what we do. I'm not one of them, obviously, but there are people who don't. And my thought is, you know, you don't have to put it in their face. You don't have to shove it down their throat. People who have cards can find us and they can come in and get it. We don't have sign twirlers. We have no signs out in front of the building. Our awning has a script across it that says 80 South Penn. It does not say our name. Our name is on a small little logo that's on our door, and that's it. So we're trying to fit into the community and not antagonize those who don't agree with us. That's fine. You know, you can have your way, let us have our way.
That's very respectful to the community.
So that's why I made the deal with this particular gentleman. The biggest reason was the nicest dispensary. The other reason was I thought that he was a good retailer. I thought he'd be a good partner. As it turned out, he wasn't. Ended up absconding with a lot of money, and we had to go to court and get him out of the business, and it cost us $500,000 probably to get through all that, and which we didn't anticipate. I had to take in partners and all kinds of stuff, and it was a big mess, and we were fighting to survive. Right. And now I think we've passed most of the hurdles, and we are going to survive, and we have a very nice facility and a very nice grow, and but that's how I got into the business, and that's why I got into the business. I thought by the end of 2010, I would be back in my old commercial real estate business, and I have this little business that creates a little income for me. And instead, I've fought every battle you can imagine, and I've worked 90 hours a week for a year. Where the first year I was in the business, I got 1 day off.
So you're starting to hear the reality of this, folks, is that this industry is not about making tons of money. There's a ton of work.
All we've done is
a ton of regulations. There's obviously the bad marriages to deal with and the legal issues there. But ultimately, now that you're here, I would have to say that you're doing this also for the patients. It seems.
Well, at this point, yes.
Yeah, it seems like your intent of making money in the beginning has kind of been washed away, although there's still hope in the future to make that money.
We have to make some or we go out of business.
Right.
I mean, if you continually lose money, pretty soon your door's closed. People aren't going to keep feeding your business. And I don't have any left. So, you know.
We're at that tipping point. Hopefully it's a positive one.
So I think we'll be successful, and I think we'll be fine.
So, Neil, when did you join the ride here, the entertainment, if you will?
You know, it was probably around the same time, probably not until actually late in January 2010, and I had been a software engineer for about 20 years, and I was born and raised in Philadelphia and moved out to Colorado almost about 20 years ago, and I've always been a marijuana advocate, and although there are people who use it recreationally, we can't ignore that. There is definitely medicinal value, and especially now from working in the center for so long, I see some of our patients that come in that, this really helps. The MS patients and Crohn's disease, and people can have their appetites back again and eat, and it seems like there's a lot of people who prefer this form of medication, compared to other prescription forms, which have maybe some negative impacts and side effects. So you see firsthand a lot of these patients that come through the door, and then you also have the opportunity to see them over time and change. Yes.
So, and that can involve getting off of pharmaceuticals. It could be that they are eating better, that just the fact that maybe they're just using cannabis as an edible or a suppository or topical, or for inhalation therapy, for smoking, for those of you out there who haven't heard inhalation therapy before. So what I'd like to do real quick is just take a quick break. Let's go to our sponsors and acknowledge those who support Cannabis Health News Magazine here. But when we come back, Neil, if you don't mind, do you mind sharing a story or two about some of the patients that you've seen come through the door? And, of course, Richie, you can chime in on that one. So we're going to return after we hear from our sponsors. So thank you very much for listening to Neil and Richie from Be Goods, and we'll be right back with Cannabis Health News Magazine.
California's Attorney General has determined that the Repeal Cannabis Prohibition Act will save hundreds of millions of dollars from our overburdened justice system while creating hundreds of millions in new tax revenues from new sustainable jobs and industries that are friendly to our environment. But we can't do it without your help. We are seeking your donations to get on the ballot. Please go to repealcannabisprohibition.org to learn more about how you can help. It's time to end the war on cannabis and hemp in California. It's time to end the madness. Paid for by Sensible Californians Incorporated.
The law offices of Edson, Maton, and Matz provide criminal defense, medical marijuana defense, and advice about setting up and running medical marijuana centers, optional premises cultivation operations, and infused product manufacturing businesses throughout Colorado. With offices in Denver and Aspen, we can offer assistance throughout the entire state of Colorado. Give us a call at 303-831-8188. That's 303-831-8188. Or visit us online at warrenedson.com.
Experience the healing power of flowers at the 2011 Best Meds Competition winner in Colorado Springs. Canna Caregivers off North Academy Boulevard and the Canna Center on Power south of Constitution. Call us at 719-597-6685 or 719-597-9333.
Are you a medical marijuana patient or interested in finding out how to become one? Contact Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern. Conveniently located on Hamden and Tamarack in the Whole Foods parking lot behind Proof of the Pudding. Mile High Wellness offers a wide variety of edibles, hashes, and some of Colorado's top strains. Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern. 3525 South Tamarack, Suite 110, on the corner of Hamden and Tamarack. 720-382-8516. Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern.
Welcome back. We're here with Cannabis Health News Magazine and Richie and Neil from Be Goods. Thanks for joining us. It's really good to have you guys here.
Great to see you, Jason.
So we're just touching on a couple important issues. One, where you guys got to start in the industry, what this industry is guided by in terms of regulatory system. But then let's get down to the ground level work that we're seeing out there in terms of who this is affecting. Richie, Neil, do you mind sharing a story or two about some of the patients you've seen come through your center's door?
Sure. And this is a great story. It just happened a couple weeks ago, but there's a lady who's a patient, and she had called me, and she was trying different strains and smoking, and she wasn't getting a lot of relief. And this person has MS, and she hasn't had a good night's sleep in several years, and it's affecting her work, obviously, as you can imagine. And I suggested, to try something on the edible side instead of, the smoking. And I suggested a few of my favorites. And the wind-up was she came in and she got a few of these things, and I got a call the next day how she had the best sleep she had in years, and it just really sent tingles through my body that I was obviously not anywhere near a doctor or anything like that, but just to be able to suggest something like that to a patient who was in pain and needed something, and to hear her response and how her life was improved, even just from that one night of good sleep. And from what I understand, she's been sleeping great. And that's really what it's all about. To see someone improve like that, it really makes it worth being in the business.
That's a major one. An MS story, for those of you out there who aren't familiar with MS, it's multiple sclerosis, where a person loses control of their muscles, essentially. It can be painful. It's disconcerting to a lot of people around them, because it's hard to watch somebody shake and suffer and not be able to communicate. And having that rest, that sleep, is so major. It allows us to think clearly. It allows the body to actually heal overnight. So a lot of us, we're just barely getting a little bit of sleep, which is not allowing us to even heal at all. And so you're sharing a story that I hope more and more people hear, because it takes somebody who is on all these pharmaceuticals, suffering from the side effects, and puts them into a quality of life that they enjoy, and that they can then participate with other people in the community around them. So thanks for sharing that one. So Richie, how about yourself? I know you guys run into a amazing clientele because of your shop. It really does attract a certain demographic that you won't see in a lot of the other centers. So Richie, share one with us.
I want to share a story because it's such a good one, but I first want to talk about that demographic a bit.
Yes,
okay?
please.
We do have quite a nice demographic in that we're the only dispensary I've ever been in that doesn't have a plate glass window that you have to shove your cart under, with locked doors that are bulletproof and all that stuff to get into. You just walk right in. And in the 2.5 years, almost 3 years that we've been open, the restaurant next door has been robbed 3 times and burglarized once. The cops are going to the bar on the corner now and then because of disturbances. They've been in the coffee shop next door to us. We have never had one incident in our shop where a customer even became unruly.
Wow.
We've never had one negative incident. But more about that demographic. We get quite a few people who are older, who are not the 30-year-old young male who
the stereotypical perception that's out there, right?
Right. We get quite a few of those. Now, do we get people who I am confident are recreational users? Of course we do. There's no way to prevent that. You're going to get that in any system. You're going to get people abusing any system that you create. But what I don't want to do is throw out the baby with the bathwater. And I'm going to show you how, why I think that. This story, I have to be very careful because these are patient health records, and you don't want to expose anything that might identify the patient. So I have to be very careful.
HIPAA compliance is what we're referencing.
But I'm going to tell you about a woman who has, again, multiple sclerosis. It's not the only disease this is good for, but this is just such a good story, I want to share it as well. She was about to lose her job because the pain that she had from her MS was so great she could not perform her work functions. So she went to her doctor, and the medications she tried 3 or 4 medications that he recommended, and every one of those medications, if she took enough to stop the pain, she was incapacitated and couldn't work.
Right.
So she thought she was going to lose her job. Her boss recommended medical marijuana.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Her boss happens to be a friend of mine.
Wow.
And he recommended medical marijuana and got her to try it with the edibles. And what happened is the first dosage, she got high. Now, this person, I don't want to give away too much, but I will say she is connected very closely with law enforcement, with drug law enforcement, and was very anti-drug in every way. Anything that had to do with recreational drug use, very anti. But she tried it because she was out of hope. She had no hope left. And the first time she tried it, she took too much and got high. She had the effect of the recreational user gets and didn't want to do that. So her friend recommended using a lower dosage. She tried that. It didn't do any good. But she kept experimenting, and she found a dosage that took her pain, in her words, now these are her words, they took her pain from an 8 on a scale of 1 to 10 down to a 3.
Oh, wow.
Which enabled her to
substantial.
go back to work and do her job and did not get her high. So she now is in there every single week. She comes in every single week. This is over a year. It might be a year and a half now. And she's doing her job. She's doing her job well. She's a super performer, and it's changed her entire life. And this is a person who's very close to law enforcement. So, and had a very negative opinion before she started. So
this is a very, very, very important story. Aside from the association to law enforcement, you brought up something that's critical for patients, new patients especially, to understand. And that is the titration of the dosage. Yes, if you take too much, you will feel high, if you will. You're going to feel lethargic. You might feel tired. You might feel a little anxious. But don't worry. That's something that will dissipate if you eat a little bit of chocolate, drink some water. That'll start to calm that high feeling down a little bit. Now, what you bring up, though, is it's really important to have the patience and understanding that maybe the first time that's going to happen, but you can then back off of that and then start to find where that dosage works for you.
Dosage is critical, and that's one of the problems with edibles is, not everybody is incredibly well financed in this business,
right.
And it costs a lot of money to make the dosage uniform throughout.
That's a tough one, yeah.
That's a tough one.
Yep.
So the dosage that's labeled on these things is not always 100% accurate, and if you eat half of something, you might not be getting half of the dosage.
And if you eat it, it's going to affect
side.
Me differently than...
Absolutely. We all are affected differently.
Yeah.
So dosage is something that you have to pay attention to in this industry, or the patient does, and has to work at to find the medication and the dosage that works for them. And once they find it, they're so happy. They're so happy, Jason. But it takes a little work on their part.
It does. And it takes speaking with a caregiver or a center owner or a med tender who knows what they're talking about to help guide you through that process.
Right.
So there's something I really would like to talk about, and that's a little bit bigger picture of what's happening in our industry. We have the centers. You guys are center owners. We deal with the patients. We have law enforcement to deal with. We have the regulatory officers out there from MMCED, and I think it's important to mention that a lot of people call MMED. It's actually MMCED. It's Medical Marijuana Criminal Enforcement Division. We forget that word in there. But there are a lot of other groups out there. We have MMIG, CBA, MMBA, the acronyms, right? There's Act for Colorado. And I'll pause on that one. Those of you out there know that I sit on the board with Association for Cannabis Trades for Colorado, and so do you, Richie. You also serve as a member for Associations for Cannabis Trades in Colorado. And I'd like to just speak from that perspective for a little bit in terms of what we hear, what we're trying to do. What is Act for Colorado, Richie? I know I've mentioned this a couple times, but go ahead and throw that out there for us.
Okay. Well, there are a couple of groups in this industry that are very well funded, and they have very few members, but those members are all the larger medical marijuana establishments, the people who have the big dollars, and they have lobbyists, and they have a large influence in how these laws are written and the amendments to the laws and so forth. But they represent very few businesses. Big money, but not very many people. That's exactly right. They represent the big money and not very many people. Act for Colorado, it was formed to represent the little guys, and there are a lot of us. There are probably 400 or 500 MMCs out there who are not big enough to be in the other groups, and a lot of them are in Act for Colorado. And even people who aren't members of Act for Colorado frequently come to our educational seminars. They're the most well-attended seminars because we're here to give the education to everyone so that they can properly come into compliance with the law and find ways to compete with the big boys who are dominating it right now. And that's basically the purpose of our organization. It's leveling the playing field. It's flat earth, as was it Friedman wrote that book a couple of years ago. Right. But one other thing, Jason, these are small centers that are barely surviving. Some of them can barely get by month to month. They can't afford to pay the large dues. Right. We don't have dues. Therefore, we can't hire lobbyists. So even though we represent the vast majority of the center owners in Colorado, and the other two organizations that have lobbyists represent a very small segment of that population, they have the major influence in the way the laws are written because they have the money to hire lobbyists. Right. So we're trying to do things to correct that at this point. It's very, very difficult without money. Politics is dominated by money. Everyone knows that. But we've and I say we, Act for Colorado has made it big impact with very little money. Yes. So that said, we don't have lobbyists, but yet we stay very politically active. We are able to address a lot of the issues, unfortunately, that are brought up by the money groups, if you will, that have lobbyists after the fact. And so a lot of times we're trying to recover from damage that's been sort of snuck in the first place. Right. So the one thing I will say is that I think Act for Colorado and Rico Calibri are absolutely responsible for the defeat of the DUI, the wrong-headed, silly DUID bill that was defeated last year. Yeah, and those of you who aren't familiar with the DUID bill and what Rico and Act for Colorado did, you can look up the white paper online on Act for Colorado with Colorado's website, which is ACT4co.org. Sorry, Richie, go ahead. That's all right. No, that's all I wanted to say. It's ACT has had a large influence despite its lack of money. We've had a very large influence, and that's something that I think is very important to put out there. For those of you who want to get involved, please come to the Act for Colorado meetings and at least listen to what we have to say. Meet the people that are there, the members. Neil, you've sat in on a handful of these meetings too in the past. What is your impression of Act for Colorado?
Oh, they're definitely out to help the smaller person. It's full of compassionate people, I see, and as Richie said, we don't have dues now. We were collecting dues at some point in time, and we had for a while, but we were finding out that, as Richie said, there was a lot of people that could barely pay their own bills, so we decided to not take dues. And I think the purpose of Act for Colorado is great for the small dispensary owners, and that we're the majority of the state. So we're trying to raise the bar for everybody. This is the benefit of all of us. This is not just a exclusionary group that says we want to benefit ourselves and control certain things. We're here. We really are here for the betterment of the businesses. But that said, our main focus, I think, is the patients and how they're treated. I got a quick wrap up on one issue here.
never mind.
That's okay. There's if you can go ahead and bring it up. I know there's a lot of touchy subjects right now that a lot of people in closed doors will feel comfortable talking about. This is our opportunity to go ahead and put everything on the table. I tend to be neutral in my public perception or presentation, but everyone knows I'm here to help the patients, and I'll go out of my way to help those patients. So that said, there are some other issues that are confrontational, that a lot of people may disagree with, and those of us in Act for Colorado, we do have our personal opinions. Don't get me wrong, but we do argue a lot in Act for Colorado. We disagree. It's a group made up of some very interesting people. We, I think, work together really well because we are comfortable arguing.
Yes.
And we do agree to disagree. And so we have found that we agree on a lot of issues.
Well, Nick King,
our president of Act for Colorado.
Well, until May. Nick King is a grand collaborator. He is tremendous at giving everyone their voice, finding the common ground, and creating consensus. And he does that all the time. He's really pretty terrific.
He's good. He's got that teacher in him. He's able to bring that focus back to what we're really trying to look at. So we've got a few minutes left, and I just wanted to make sure that you guys are welcome to come on back and talk about whatever it is that you feel is critical. I appreciate you guys taking the time out and coming into the studio. But that said, we've got a little bit of time left. Do you feel that there's something you'd want to get off your chest, either of you, that's really important for the listeners out there to understand? And again, keep in mind our listeners are not as well versed as we are. They are skeptical listeners. They are doubtful of what we're doing out there. So what would you say to those people?
I would say that the biggest problem that our industry faces at this stage of the game is the legislature, first in 2010 and then again in 2011, passed very sweeping bills that are a grand attempt to regulate our industry in a very effective way, and they did in the main a marvelous job. Unfortunately, to gear up an enforcement department to bring all this into play and make it work and have a structure and rules and people and enforcing those rules is a tremendous task. And it's been almost 2 years since the first bill, and enforcement is just starting to get into the act. And the truth of the matter is the biggest challenge we face is competition from the people who are not following the rules.
Right.
There are so many out there who are cheating and not following the rules and doing the wrong things and giving our industry a bad name.
Yes.
And we want those people stopped. So we are applauding the efforts of the MMCED to gear up. They're hiring a lot of people, and they're going to go out there and start enforcing a lot more strictly the rules that we already have. And once that's done, I think you'll find that the negative publicity that is sometimes surrounding some of the centers will go away. Those people will be gone.
I agree with you, and I think that said, it's in the best interest of the rest of us out there to make sure that we're following the regulations. And so
Absolutely.
Those of you out there who are not sure if you're following the regulations or not, go ahead and get in touch with Act for Colorado. Nick King and myself and Richie and a whole bunch of us do know what to look for, and I'll put it out there. I'd be willing to come by your shop and to spend a few minutes with you, more than a few minutes, of course, and just make sure you're hitting those main 6 to 10 topics, because the MMCD comes in with a specific list of things that they're looking for, and if you can address all those in a positive way, then you're going to be on on their good side. These are good people. Keep in mind that law enforcement doesn't like MMCED. They think that they're sellouts. And so I ask you to go ahead and look up that article about Angela, I think it is. Angeline, excuse me, in the New York Times, the New York Post. It's a recent article about how she has MS and she smokes twice a day, and she does drive. She doesn't get in her car right away after she smokes a joint or a bowl, but she acknowledges that she is a safe driver and she won't drive impaired. So again, thank you both for being here. Richie and Neil, I appreciate you guys from coming by from B Goods, a center on 80 South Pennsylvania. I don't know why I have that 90 in my head.
And Jason, thank you so much for everything you do in this industry.
Thanks, Richie. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And those of you out there, thanks for joining Cannabis Health News Magazine today for a wonderful show. And I hope to get outside. It looks like the sun's still shining. So we'll be back. Heads up, folks. See you in a bit.
Sarah's Medicated Teas. With over 50,000 tea bags sold, Sarah's Medicated Teas have quickly become the most popular and most effective way to medicate without smoking. Our tea bags are made with loose leaf tea and fine hash keef. We separate into sativa, indica, hybrid, and kush medicine bases in 1/3 and 1 full gram strength. Our keef infusion process has a consistent measured dose in each bag. Sarah's Medicated Teas come in 20 flavors. Enjoy them hot or over ice. Sarah's Medicated Teas can be found in 80 MMJ centers across the state of Colorado. Sarah's Medicated Teas. When you need to medicate, it's tea time.
Experience the healing power of flowers at the 2011 Best Meds Competition winner in Colorado Springs. Canna Caregivers off North Academy Boulevard and the Canna Center on Power south of Constitution. Call us at 719-597-6685 or 719-597-9333.
Are you a medical marijuana patient or interested in finding out how to become one? Contact Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern. Conveniently located on Hamden and Tamarack in the Whole Foods parking lot behind Proof of the Pudding. Mile High Wellness offers a wide variety of edibles, hashes, and some of Colorado's top strains. Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern. 3525 South Tamarack, Suite 110, on the corner of Hamden and Tamarack. 720-382-8516. Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern.
Hey, this is Stickman.
And this is Elisa. Join us on Thursday night at 8 o'clock Mountain Standard Time on iCannabisRadio.com.
California's Attorney General has determined that the Repeal Cannabis Prohibition Act will save hundreds of millions of dollars from our overburdened justice system while creating hundreds of millions in new tax revenues from new sustainable jobs and industries that are friendly to our environment. But we can't do it without your help. We are seeking your donations to get on the ballot. Please go to repealcannabisprohibition.org to learn more about how you can help. It's time to end the war on cannabis and hemp in California. It's time to end the madness. Paid for by Sensible Californians Incorporated.
Welcome to Cannabis Health News Magazine. We're here with Cliff Croan from Enagami Systems, which is a patient symptom tracking software. Thank you very much for joining us in the studio today. I really appreciate your time and coming by here, Cliff.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I am a patient. I'm very new to all the regulatory systems that we have in place, of course, for the medical marijuana system. However, I'd have to call myself a veteran for the medical system. I've unfortunately fell into that trap about, 17 years ago, I want to say. And I've gotten very familiar with the medical system over the last 17 years. And it has its own pitfalls. And then, of course, nowadays we're talking about medical cannabis and how that plays into the health system, because it's something that can help alleviate a lot of side effects, and it can also address a lot of ailments. So, Cliff, tell us a little bit more about symptom tracking, and what is that? How is that going to benefit me as a patient? Why is this something that you feel is important to not only the medical cannabis industry, but to the health system in general?
Well, my personal history, I've had people in my family who've been ill, and the promise of medical marijuana is one that we weren't able to grasp because it wasn't in the market. As a clinician, I've been about 35 years as a behavioral health clinician. I had a client that started tracking her mood states, and we looked at that and compared her mood states, which for her were symptoms, depression, and compared it with the medication. For a medical marijuana person, cannabis patient, we want to figure out what medication works. And so if we inquire pretty frequently about what medication you're using and what's happening with your symptoms, are they being depressed or are you containing symptoms in a chronic condition, then you can see what medication works. That's kind of the basic evidence-based medicine. Mm-hmm. The nice thing about it at the more macro picture is that if we start tracking outcomes, and we have an evaluation-only model in Colorado and some other states, mm-hmm. We're robbing ourselves of the outcomes of finding out, what particular product works for what particular symptom.
A lot of people say, well, isn't my doctor already doing that for me? Don't our doctors track the medications they put us on and the results from that?
Usually not. medicine, there's a phrase been around for about 20, 30 years. It's called evidence-based medicine. It's looking and seeing after the intervention what's happened. Did the intervention work, or did we cut off the right leg? The wrong leg. Yeah.
We've seen that. Unfortunately, that has happened.
Yeah. Technology has some real promise for us.
Yeah, that black Sharpie marker gets misplaced RL.
I was nervous when they walk in the room. I've had it on my body a couple of times.
Yeah, that's something I've been told a lot about. A lot of people, before they even go to the doctor, they'll go ahead and write on their arm, "Not this arm," or something. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
So you're bringing up a piece to the puzzle that's really important that could help alleviate these issues of, hey, I woke up and my arm's missing, even though I came in for an ingrown toenail.
We really need to track, and it behooves us in the medical marijuana field, to find out what symptoms respond to what medications.
And so you mentioned that earlier. Excuse me a second. For those of you out there listening, you're hearing Cliff talk about medication. What he's referencing is THC, the CBDs, the cannabinoids in cannabis, and so a medication could be made up of a 1-to-1 ratio, for example, of CBD to THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, and cannabidiol. And so then we also have all these other cannabinoids or cannabinoids. Excuse me. I should know this. I'm stumbling on my words today. Such as CBG, CBGV, so on and so forth. And so what you're addressing here are those medications, not necessarily morphine or fentanyl or so on and so forth.
Yeah, specifically the cannabis, the medications and products in there. It holds great. We've promised. We've got these great stories of this man down in Colorado Springs that is on death's door. He's a beautiful guy, really
Bob
nice.
Krause.
That's him.
Yeah,
nicest guy in the world.
He's got leukemia,
and he's getting better.
Yes, he is.
And we have all these wonderful examples, but we don't really have the data on that. We need to collect information in as scientific a way as we can, and my own company offers that, and I think it's something that's very important.
It is. A lot of people talk about double-blind studies, but what you're bringing into the picture here and acknowledging that is also valid data is collecting the patient-by-patient relationship to the results of the medicine.
Absolutely, yeah.
So where are you at right now with this system? Is this something that I can go ahead and log on to your website and see how a demo of this process? Is this something that centers are using currently? Where are we at with, or where are you at with the system?
Right now we've taken down our website. We've got a corporate website, EnagamiSystems.com, but our link, and we're improving our service. We've got a branded product, if you will, that a doctor in Michigan looks to be using, that he'll sign people up, but we need to tweak the website a little bit for doing that.
Great. So it's in its initial stages, so you're starting to get it out there.
It's been something really going on since 2005 or so. I think I took a patent out on the process of how this is done, but we've developed the product over the years, and we're hoping to get some fairly large numbers in Colorado and
Florida
Michigan.
and Arizona, Michigan.
Well, where there's like between Colorado and Michigan, there's 300,000 people, and in I think our state, Colorado, is moving towards you have to do follow-up type of model. Michigan and Montana have already started doing that.
In terms of what that doctor-patient relationship is.
Right. What they've said is instead of doing it legislatively because of the votes that they would need, they've done it administratively. The oversight departments have written policies, and 98% of the laws in the United States are administrative anyway.
Right.
So they've written some legislation that mandating some type of follow-up. Even Colorado's Medical Practice Act alludes to medical practice is not just a discrete event. And we're again, in the medical marijuana world, we're just doing evaluations and not doing real follow-up to find out, and we're really shooting ourselves in the foot about that. We really don't know what works. We just know that doctors can make a lot of money by doing a lot of evaluations.
I totally agree with you on that one. That's something that I hope to see is solved in the near future, because not only is it beneficial to that patient to learn that combination of medication in terms of cannabis medication that they're given is actually working and addressing their ailments. But it's something that there's so many variables involved. And so if I go and I start using, say, keef, which is mechanically separated trichomes, it's the little balls of THC, if you will, on the plant. If I eat that, it's going to behave differently in my body, and I'm going to feel differently than if I were to cook it in a brownie and eat that, or if I were to smoke it. I'm going to have 3 separate results. So I don't think we're at a place where we can say, hey, take 2 aspirin in the morning and call me in the morning. But on that note, it's really important to recognize in that statement that the doctor says, hey, call me in the morning. It's that follow-up to let him know, is that working? So is this going to prevent or eliminate, it shouldn't prevent obviously, but is this going to eliminate that stack of paper that I have to carry around to my doctor's office? So, when I had insurance, all my records were located in a central place and were accessible. Unfortunately, I don't have insurance anymore. And so not only does it cost me money to get access to those records that I need to then go to the hospital, like I had some emergency care last week and I didn't have my records, and of course I then have to go through that process of informing them who I am, and they're doubtful, of course. They wonder if you're drug-seeking behavior and all that kind of stuff. Fortunately, I go into the hospital and I tell them right off the bat, I don't want any of your drugs. I just want to know what's wrong with me so I can fix myself. And
I have the opposite deal. You look much more youthful than I. I've got a little bit of white in my beard.
A little
bit, and they just kind of assume that I'm not.
Right.
Or that if I write a check, it's going to be good.
Right.
I think it goes with getting longer in the two.
So how is this system? And I'm going to do this again.
Okay.
Enigami. Good, I got it right. And by the way, what's the website? ENIGAMISYSTI. I know you said it was off, but but for people,
the corporate website, it's the word imagine spelled backwards. Enagami.
Oh.
And then the real meaning of it is enhanced numerical indices gathering and assessing medical interventions, which I don't think anyone in the world knows except for me.
Wow, that is fantastic. It's one of those acronyms that you probably wouldn't want to remember, but it actually has some important meaning behind it.
It does. It's kind of research. Going back to just a second, you were talking about different type of products, like edibles, smokables, etc. It's like I look at PTSD, and I've done some research in reading about it. But the nice thing about PTSD, the symptoms come right away. Well, you wouldn't want an edible with that. So generally, because of the anecdotal wisdom that we have, you would know that someone who is having high anxiety or some type of panic symptoms, they need a medication that acts immediately,
right?
Not in 45 minutes.
Right.
So it just kind of makes sense.
So inhalation therapy in that case, or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So real quick, we're just going to take a break and get a little word from our sponsors for Cannabis Health News Magazine. We're going to come on right back, and of course, Cliff, you're bringing some information to the table that I think is really important to a lot of our new listeners out there. So we'll be right back to get some more details from Cliff. Thanks for listening to Cannabis Health News Magazine, and we'll be right back.
The law offices of Edson, Maton, and Matz provide criminal defense, medical marijuana defense, and advice about setting up and running medical marijuana centers, optional premises cultivation operations, and infused product manufacturing businesses throughout Colorado. With offices in Denver and Aspen, we can offer assistance throughout the entire state of Colorado. Give us a call at 303-831-8188. That's 303-831-8188. Or visit us online at warrenedson.com.
Are you a medical marijuana patient or interested in finding out how to become one? Contact Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern. Conveniently located on Hamden and Tamarack in the Whole Foods parking lot behind Proof of the Pudding. Mile High Wellness offers a wide variety of edibles, hashes, and some of Colorado's top strains. Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern. 3525 South Tamarack, Suite 110, on the corner of Hamden and Tamarack. 720-382-8516. Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern.
Experience the healing power of flowers at the 2011 Best Meds Competition winner in Colorado Springs. Canna Caregivers off North Academy Boulevard and the Canna Center on Power south of Constitution. Call us at 719-597-6685 or 719-597-9333.
I'm Gary Johnson, and you're listening to iCannabis Radio, and I want to say, talk it up, Colorado.
Welcome back to Cannabis Health News Magazine. We're here with Cliff Croan from Enagami Systems. We're chatting a little bit about how symptom tracking is something that we really should be aware of. As patients, it's going to benefit our health. It's going to help increase the time of resolving an issue. It's going to decrease our costs. I mean, there's a lot of benefits to this system. So, Cliff, you did mention that this is a relatively new system, that you have one doctor now that's implemented this, or at least on a trial basis. What do you see, or where do you see the system going? How do you see the industry looking at a system like this for symptom tracking?
Well, there's a lot of benefits. There's really kind of three stools to the care model. One, unfortunately, is insurance, who's paying. Mm-hmm. The other is the provider, and the next would be the consumer, the patient. It's great for patients, to know what medication works, and that's can be a great benefit for the medical marijuana field. But tracking has a couple of other implications. One is by looking at the symptoms and tracking them, we can crunch the numbers, and we can actually do grades for physicians. And there's a brilliant guy up in Harvard and Mass General. His name is Ashish Jha, and he's been doing some research on provider ratings. It's really interesting. These guys that went through school and thought they were just fantastic, and everyone loved them, found out they had a lot of high mortality and cardiac type of problems. And so they gave grades to these doctors and found out it really discombobulated the field. Some doctors retired, some moved out of state, some found out they were just wonderful clinicians. So again, by taking this, the primary data capture, tracking the symptoms, you can give one aspect is that you can give grades or rankings to physicians. Another aspect is looking at quality. And the largest, I think, because it benefits everyone or impacts everyone, is that by taking this data, this is pretty hard data, and it indicates whether or not an insurer is going to benefit by using these doctors and for these diagnoses. Again, these systems can figure out what doctor is good at what specific diagnosis, but symptom tracking can be crunched into fiscal review. Oddly enough, in the largest insurer in our country, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, they don't do any fiscal review. In our little state of Colorado, Medicaid represents about 25% of the budget, about $4.5 billion. And industry standards are that did an informal poll of the National Association of Independent Review Organizations. They think that our budget is 1 to 1.2 billion in Colorado over. So that's 25% of our state budget. The systems like this would be just marvelous. There is a need. The state recovered $264 million. Put out a press release about this when they started looking, because people like myself have been raising this as an issue for a number of years. But the pushback on this is that the people who are guarding their turf, who don't want their services reviewed by the state.
It's that doctor on the pedestal, if you will, who's been put up there because of perception instead of actual qualifications.
Yes, yeah, sad.
So something I see actually in this is, at first I was like, wow, this is going to start to create some competition, if you will, but I actually see this as something that's going to allow more cooperative relationships with physicians in treating patients. So you mentioned that it's going to allow us to give a grade to that doctor in terms of their diagnosis, which I think is interesting, because then we can start to really look at that physician's skill set and start to focus in on where they do really perform well, and as well as where they don't perform well, and we can help fill that gap with somebody else or another skill set, or even training to help improve that. So you're actually, to me, you're opening a door to improving the system with less cost.
As a clinician, you get to see cases turn over. I was in a system that we did this. We specialized, and it was very satisfying as a clinician. My pay was very good at the time because I was performance-based pay. But performance-based pay, accountability, these are all huge issues that are coming. I mentioned a moment ago about the people who are going to be the repositories in the world according to Cliff are going to be the insurance companies. Say I have Aetna, for this year, and my wife, who's brilliant about insurance, decide, well, we're going to go with Humana next year. Well, then at the end of the year, my medical records would be transferred over to them. Now, why would insurance companies want to have your medical records? Well, by having all that information together in one place, especially using technology such as one I'm having, you're able to access it if the person's in Taiwan. It's all up to date. It's at once. Taiwan actually used a medical card for a while where they had all your information on. Problem is that you have to update it every time you go to the doctor, which is kind of a pain in the posterior. So, my thinking is that technology reach out and gather the information, and it can be stored, in all these different server farms. And if I stay with the same insurance company, they have access. But the insurance companies are the ones with the deep pockets. Are in this economy. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, as well private insurance, they all want to save money. Our medical care is unsustainable.
Right.
I think that I wrote a proposal with the Blue Ribbon Commission for Healthcare Reform here under Ritter, and what this commission came up with is that by 2025 it's unsustainable. Our cost, 110% of the average Joe's income will go to medical care, and obviously that just doesn't work. So we've got to find ways to have more efficient care.
So a couple of the other, let's kind of come back to the cannabis industry here. A couple of the other things that this addresses are the perception from the public that if I'm not a cannabis user and I look at somebody walking out of a center or walking down the street and I look at them and say, yeah, they don't deserve cannabis. They look healthy. We see a lot of those people out there, those doctors that haven't been trained, that have x-ray vision, And by the way, if you guys really do have that ability and you can look at somebody and say they're healthy or not healthy, please give me a call. I want to hire you. You really have a cool skill out there. You didn't go to school for anything related to medical stuff, and you have x-ray vision. So give me a call.
Well, the prejudice remains, all this stuff with what Harry Anslinger, the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, and Reefer Madness, and all this publicity. It'd be a shame. I was really 3 times in my life I've really been in a quandary, and not to pontificate, but I was a widower back in '94, and my spouse didn't know until the last year of her life that she could take a couple of puffs of cannabis and she could breathe quite a bit better. She was disabled. She actually died from asthma, but to know out of 43 years had one good year where she could have her symptoms reduced, and she was actually disabled. So there was hope, but we never knew it. And so this woman suffered for many years and didn't have to. My father had cancer, and but you can bet, hey, picked up some cannabis and a little metal pipe and. With the security at the airport and down there to bring my dad some cannabis for his hunger, to help him. Wow. But
it's amazing.
We know these things anecdotally.
It's really amazing what people do, and just hearing that quick story, it's amazing what you did to go out of your way to help not only just anybody but your father.
Well, when you're sick, or when someone that you love is sick. A year or so ago, my brother-in-law had bone cancer, and my sister called and said, where do we go? And I don't know, and I really didn't know. But I know if there was anything in cannabis, so I thought that that would have some effect on bone cancer. I mean, of course, we don't know all this stuff because we don't know our outcomes.
We need that data.
We've got to have it, because how wonderful, and you only really know that if you've been sick or someone you love has been sick. You don't like them to suffer, and you reach for anything. Who's the actor that was doing the coffee enemas in Mexico for cancer? Steve McQueen.
Steve McQueen, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we get desperate, and if whatever it is in cannabis can do things like shrink tumors, I'm a fan, certainly.
And so you're bringing a very important piece to the pie here, where we're going to be able to, or we are able to, track the symptoms, so we can start to have concrete statements where we can say this ratio of THC and CBD at this dosage for this amount of time will create apoptosis with cancer cells.
Yeah. it's really very interesting because of the regulations. MJ Freeway, Mark Goldberg,
right? Mark,
we put together a consortium, of which we are in it. And we're tracking it from the seed, to what the effect, so the seed to the sale, then after the sale, what's the effect, and so we've got this great comprehensive look, and we're blessed because we really have quality control, testing what is in these products, and then we can compare it directly to the symptom status. So, the world is our oyster, so to speak, in this.
And we have the pieces of the puzzles. We have the testing as the facilities here in Colorado are getting up to speed. We are starting to develop baseline standards so that hopefully everyone's on the same page with their numbers. Excuse me.
Well, we have great partners in the state. I mean, Colorado's has always been a very progressive state.
It has.
And they've tried a lot of different approaches and in many different avenues of life, but I think that we've unfortunately gotten into a little bit of an adversarial relationship with the regulatory authorities.
Right.
It's kind of like if you play patty cake, with someone and you push, they just naturally push back. That just is in our nature as human beings, and it's felt like there's pushing on both sides. So we need to, I think, embrace
some Tai Chi. We need, right?
I think the philosophy of it, Jason, you're right, is that we need to go with them as friends, very Gandhi-esque. That as we go on this, and we need to keep out of each other's way. And I know sometimes the state really has gotten in the way of patient care. Horrible thing that happened recently in Colorado is that about 4,200 people went to a clinic system or clinics, and they were using advanced practice nurses.
The nurse practitioners.
Yeah, the nurse practitioners. And the legislature really didn't want that to happen at this point. But it's a great use of professionals, and it's a shame that we haven't used it.
What's interesting about that is from what my layman's understanding, again, I'm not an attorney or a physician, but what I read in those documents and after talking to a lot of people is that it's accepted from the medical establishment. It's the CDPHE, the Colorado Department of Public Health, that's really creating the stopgap.
Well, I think it's both of us. I think it's both both sides of pro and con, because it's so new. I mean, some of the things just don't make sense. I was watching the one of the committee meetings at CDPHE, their Medical Marijuana Advisory Committee. That's for Dr. Urbina. They were talking about where can you medicate, and everyone's very tired, and someone just shot out, well, let's not use vehicles. And so, I had a friend who come to me and say, what happens if I'm down in Durango and I don't know anybody and I have to medicate? And so I don't know. And he goes, well, I can't do it in my car because I get in trouble. And I said, well, perhaps we should have paid more attention to that in the committee meeting.
Right.
No, it's just such a new area. It's it holds great promise, but I think that we should do it, in friendship and in partnership with the regulatory authorities. Dr. Urbina at Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment's, I think, a very progressive fellow. And
sorry, I had to clear my throat.
He and with others, the Department of Revenues is surely reaping a harvest, so to speak. Excuse my pun on that, but the state's getting some money for this, and we can turn around and invest it.
Not just some money, but millions of dollars.
20 or something like that.
And keep in mind, the government, if you will, reappropriated what it was close to $10 million last year from the marijuana registry account.
That fund, yeah.
Yeah, the fund.
Wow.
So these are definitely things that we need to think about. There's a resource there that should be used appropriately, but so far hasn't.
It's a great resource.
It's
kind of an accident that happened. Another thing that was really very interesting in our how cannabis can be used in Colorado is that we use the term caregiver. Now,
not caretaker. That's for dead folks.
I wish we'd use another one because caregiver in the medical marijuana community means something very different than the disability community,
right?
Which I'm very involved in, the persons with disabilities, and that community really kind of was ignored because they've been trying legislatively to get a definition for caregiver, which is very different than the one which was inadvertently used when we made cannabis. So
there was a patient I recall, and I won't use his last name, but Mark would come and testify on this one quite often in regards to this issue. Yeah. So I know we only have a few minutes left, but I just want to make sure that our listening audience, it sounds like we've covered quite a bit here, but I want to make sure our listening audience understands that this is an ever-changing process. We're still learning about what works and what doesn't work. Unfortunately, because there has been a lot of infighting in the industry and a lot of people want to, excuse me, run the show, if you will, which is unfortunately a lot of times not in the best interest of the patient. Right now, we're seeing some shift in the industry. It looks like a lot of the entities are starting to at least acknowledge each other, and some of them are starting to work together. So we see the Association for Cannabis Trades is reaching out and engaging in conversation with the Cannabis Business Alliance or the Medical Marijuana Business Alliance, and a lot of other groups out there. What would you say that we need to do as a whole, being that I sit on the Act for Colorado board, for example. I'm also committee chair for the Colorado Patients Out of Time Committee.
Free tickets on this? Or?
I know, right? need to.
I think we have to go forward as a coalition, and I think that we. A woman by the name of Betty here.
Betty Aldworth.
Betty Aldworth was
wonderful woman.
Very, I think, kind of visionary, saying that we should get together as a coalition. There's one thing that's very true, and there's a saying at our capital, like other state capitals, is that well, you've got to be down there and you've got to be in the discussion, because unless you're at the table, you're on the menu.
That's it, and that's so true here in Colorado. Right now, there's a lot of stuff going on in regards to SB 154, which is the Responsible Vendor Act, which was proposed recently, which I agree with. I'm really happy to see that we're moving forward and trying to create, what this industry structure could be, will be, I should say, guided by. And this Responsible Vendor Act, I think it started to go in the right direction. However, there was an amendment brought in by MMIG, the Medical Marijuana Industry Group, which basically excludes the players in this industry from contributing to writing that document.
Divide and conquer.
Divide and conquer. You just nailed it right there. And what we've been talking about in not only our conversation, but in all the shows that we've done so far, is that cooperative resource. We need to work together. We may disagree on a lot of things, but we agree on one thing for sure, and that this is about helping patients.
Absolutely.
So I'll throw that out there. I don't want to get too detailed into SB 154, but do pay attention to it. It hasn't gone to appropriations yet. I have a feeling that we will hear more about that bill. And then just to throw out another bill, which we're all trying to keep an eye on, is SB 117, the DUID bill. Mm-hmm. And a lot of us are making sure that we are staying on top of what's happening with that bill. It's going to appropriations with a $600,000 to $1 million price tag. So that said, I don't think it's going to pass appropriations. I sure hope not. And for those of you out there who are listening to us saying, yeah, you guys are cannabis users, we want that to pass. This affects pharmaceutical prescription users. So this is not just about medical cannabis users, which, by the way, there is no scientific correlation to impairment in blood THC levels. That said, this addresses Schedule II drugs, which are depressants, antidepressants, so things like Adderall, that a lot of people take to keep themselves rational and stable, would not be allowed to drive. There's a zero tolerance.
Slippery slope. When is it that what if you get in the car and you're just really, really angry? Is that going to be against the law someday?
Well, let's
we have to be prudent about what makes sense and what doesn't.
Cliff, you bring up a really important topic right there, and this probably could be a whole show. But let's look at the things that actually cause a impairment. Texting. All right. I know that I got hit in 2007 by a 16-year-old driving her dad's 350 pickup at a stop. I was at a stoplight. Stopped. She's driving, coming up on my rear end, no brakes. Slams into me at 45 miles an hour. She was texting, folks. All right? That's impairment. Putting your makeup on your car is impairment. Shaving while you're in your car, that's impairment. Changing the radio dial on your car. You are more impaired doing those things than any of us are using cannabis and driving, or and I'm not going to go down the prescription comments here because I lost a friend of mine a few years back to a woman who was driving with Ambien. And she thought she was capable. She thought her body was responding like her mind was. Unfortunately, her mind's going, and her body's not responding. She drove 75 feet off the highway and hit my friend who was picking trash up off the ground.
Jeez.
And killed him instantly. So, there are some bigger issues that we're not paying attention to. We're using stereotypical misnomers. It's not real.
Maybe we could use some of this money that the state of Colorado is collecting in revenues and use it for, studying things like what is impairment.
What is impairment?
And
so you bring up a really important thing right there is studies. So Dr. Alan Shackelford has been trying to get together a DUID study with law enforcement, and everyone wants to do it. We just don't have the money.
That guy, he is really a brilliant man.
Dr. Shackelford.
He is practicing here in Colorado. His academic credentials are just really outstanding.
Harvard trained, yep.
Yeah, and we've had many innovators in other areas of medicine have come into this. There's, I think, the doctor who started the mobile mammogram service was one that was delved into the field. So it's a very innovative. A lot of people who are drawn to it are innovators, by nature. So.
Yeah, that's something that I think is really important to point out here. We are an industry of motivated people. A lot of us, actually, I don't think any of us take no for an answer. If someone says no to us, we just go ahead and face the facts even more aggressively. We just get more motivated. This industry is here because of that. We are a bunch of people who are motivated by our own beliefs and our own morals and understanding that the foundation of all of this comes back to America and how we got here in the first place. We didn't follow rules to start this country. Our founding fathers broke every rule that the British told them they had to follow, right? And that's why we're here today. This is a nation of independent thinkers. We're not a nation of one thought and one message. We're a nation of individuals with individual ideas, and what's really coming out in all of this is the cannabis industry. The cannabis industry, to me, is made up of mostly, of course there's always exception to the rule, of true American people who believe in working to the betterment, towards the betterment of the whole society at their own sacrifice.
Yeah, it's if people are trying to do the right thing.
Yeah,
I think that's really the bottom line.
That's the easiest way to say it.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Cliff, for your time today. I really appreciate this. This is very informative. This is opening the door to a conversation that hopefully brings some new people to the table and some new ideas. So those of you out there who are listening to this and a light bulb goes off in your head, go ahead and get in contact with Cliff. And how can people get in contact with you right now?
Actually, probably the easiest way to get a hold of me is just to Google me. You can either do that, or I'll take emails at my name, CD Croan, CROAN, at EnagamiSystems.com. Love to take any questions. I get questions from people. There's some young ladies approaching the Scottish government.
Oh, wow.
I collaborated a little bit with some information. So it's going. And there's a guy, Ming Flanagan, is a funny name, Ming. But
Chinese Irish
in Ireland, it looks like he's pretty much Irish, totally. But he's running on the legalization ticket for marijuana in Ireland.
Oh wow!
And,
I hadn't heard about that.
Yeah, it's kind of a worldwide thing. It's the wonderful benefits we might be able to reap from this are just fantastic. There's a lot of hope in there.
Yeah, there really is, and that's where that data is so important. So thank you very much for moving us in the right direction. Especially with taking your skill set and bringing it to the cannabis industry to benefit the patients and just make it easier on everybody.
Yeah.
So again, you're welcome back anytime. We'd love to have you come back and talk more about this in detail, especially here. I'd love to hear about the progress that you make with the symptom tracking system.
Yeah.
And that said, knowing a little bit more about what you do, I'm going to go ahead and call a couple people that I think would be very interested in coming to the table on this one. So hopefully you guys are listening out there. If you're not, I'm going to go ahead and call you right now.
If not, I'll call you anyway.
Right. So thank you very much for joining us again today at Cannabis Health News Magazine. And those of you out there who want to learn more, please get in touch with Cliff or myself. You can reach out to CannabisHealthNewsMagazine.com. You can, again, join us on iCannabisRadio.com. There's plenty of other resources out there. If I were to go down the list of information resources, we'd probably be here all day. Just do a quick search, a Google search for cannabis and patient tracking systems, or MMCED or MMIP. We could probably throw all those acronyms out there. But as we get more and more information out to the public, we're going to have more resources on the internet. You can watch these shows on your own time on iCannabisRadio.com and click on CHNM and the recorded page. You will find the shows listed there. So thanks again for listening with Cannabis Health News today. And I want to put a special shout out there to Chris Custer, our producer. Thank you very much for your work. You've been